Randy Wilson podcast today here with Zenobia Bay, our sponsor for our episode with Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan. Zenobia, thank you so much for coming on the show. If you can, share with the audience information about Community 50/50 and whatever your call for action is.
So pretty much Community 50/50 is a 15-year nonprofit organization based out of Richmond, Virginia. We focus on youth and family. You can find us at www.community5050.org. And our three core programs are Third Sunday Feeding. We have a Lyrics and Beats program, and we have a clothing closet and mutual aid support. So pretty much providing a lot of the basic needs for families, engagement, community partnership. Our call to action right now is pretty much supporting Charged Up Charged Up Fest, created by Noah O. And that's May 30th through June 2nd. And actually one of the things we're doing with the block party is I'm actually performing. So through my artistry, I have message. You can find information about Community 50/50 at that Charged Up Fest. And just pretty much getting involved with a lot of grassroots organizations right now. I'm asking people to do. That's the call to action. And follow Community 50/50.
If you are a youth center or a youth program, or if you are a part of just any entity in the community that needs resources, I strongly encourage you to tap in with Community 50/50. They provide hip hop critical thinking workshops and just so many resourceful programs for over 10 years now, several years. And
15 to be exact. Be 15 this December.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Zenobia Bay is truly a living testament of what community is, and we appreciate you so much for being our sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to be a part.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
This was $1 million worth of game. Randy Wilson podcast with another sponsor, and we out. Welcome back to another episode of the Randy Wilson podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilson. This is Virginia's podcast for the culture, from the culture, and we are amongst a cultural icon with us today with Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan. How are you doing, Congresswoman?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I am great, and it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for coming back around.
It's a pleasure. It's the first time we've been able to do it in person.
Yes, it is. Yeah. For those who are familiar with the show, Congresswoman McClellan has been on the show previously as a senator, but not as a congresswoman. And by the way, she's not just a congresswoman. She is the first Black congresswoman out of the state of Virginia.
That's right.
And we are excited to have her today. Today's show has been sponsored by Community 50/50, a local nonprofit here in the city of Richmond who does phenomenal things in feeding the youth, feeding the city as a whole, and providing a lot of hip hop critical workshops within Richmond City schools. And we will be plugging with Zenobia Bay here in a moment. But before we get into all of that, we are here with a congresswoman. She has been kind of doing her, I don't know, we was talking before the show about, I look at it like, are you in a gym? But she said, no, it's kind of like practice. It's training. Like, she's working. We've seen her recently at WRIR. We've seen her with Mike Keene. But yours truly is here today with the Randy Wilson podcast, and we're excited to have you.
I'm always excited to be here.
Remember, this podcast can be found everywhere podcasts are played. However, I encourage you to go over to YouTube, because then you can see her. And you can always go to randywilsonpodcast.com for more. So how's things going?
Things are good. It's the best job I've ever had, but it's also the craziest job I've ever had. And, but every day I know I'm helping people, I'm making a difference, and, making history and having fun. Yeah,
you definitely made history. You've recently just finished your first year.
Yes.
And, we were just proud as constituents, obviously. And at this point, we feel like, I think the community as a whole, whether they know you or not, they feel like friends and family with you.
Oh, good. Well, what you see is what you get with me, though. So. Yeah.
And so, like, when we see you on the big mainstream things, like, we're really proud.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we're very proud. How I want to open this conversation really comes from my mom. Mm-hmm. Okay. My mom is, I'm originally from North Carolina, and I sit on the board at Senior Connections. I'm involved with the Richmond Senior Network, Partners in Healthcare. I'm very involved in senior communities. I'm very passionate about it. And talking to seniors, they talk about, they reiterate the importance of voting. Always.
Yes.
My mom will say, Randy, if you don't get out there and vote, we may lose the privilege to vote as Black people. She feels very strong and passionate about it. I'm like, Mama, where are you listening to the news at, Mama? I'm like, come on. I mean, because I'm not listening to news that I don't want to hear, to be honest with you. As a person, like I probably should listen to all news, but I don't listen. I don't get caught up in the stuff that's depressing. So sometimes when she says stuff to me like that, I'm like, you're just listening to one of those channels. But like, explain the consequences and the issues right now that we're facing, particularly as Black people when it comes to our voting and democracy.
Well, first, let me take you back to why voting is important in general, no matter what election. I mean, we've heard since we were kids that this is a government by, of, and for the people. What that means is government will only reflect the perspectives of, and therefore meet the needs of the people who participate. And for much of our country's history, we weren't allowed to participate. And so I think about in my own family, I had a great grandfather that had to take a literacy test and find 3 white men to vote, to vouch for him to be able to vote. My father, my grandfather paid poll taxes, but my grandmother and great grandmothers never voted. And my mom didn't vote until after the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So I think first we owe it to people who literally fought and died to give us the right to participate in government. But then you look at what's at stake. And it's everything from who appoints judges to the Supreme Court that then are in a position to either protect or gut the rights that we have. And we've seen that with the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act, overturning Roe versus Wade and putting reproductive freedom at risk. Who is going to put our priorities first? And if you just look at the current president and the former president, their record on just about every issue could not be starker. And you have, a lot of people forget 4 years ago, we were in the midst of a COVID crisis that impacted people of color more than anybody else. We were dying at higher rates than anybody else. Pretty much every healthcare issue, we die at higher rates than anybody else. I'm a Black mom who almost died during childbirth. Former president wasn't doing anything about that. The economy was really tanking in a way that only benefited the already wealthy. And the gap between the wealthy and the middle class, let alone the lower income folks, was growing. And I could go on and on. He wasn't doing anything to address the climate crisis. As a matter of fact, he was making it worse. And our people are impacted more than any other. So now you have a president who has made historic investments in HBCUs, historic investments in addressing the climate change, historic investments in the healthcare system, even in roads and bridges and building communities, putting them back together like Jackson Ward that were ripped apart by highways. But to your mom's point, you have a man who has said, if he is reelected, will be a dictator on day one. He's not kidding. You have a man who whipped up his supporters to try for the second time in our history to take by force what they couldn't win at the ballot box. He'd do it again. You have a man who has said he would weaponize prosecutors to go after his political enemies. He's serious. So let alone he's not going to worry about trying to address our issues. He will destroy our democracy. And I think that is something that we all need to take seriously. Is there
legislation out there though that supports people to believe that it's a chance that voting could change for people of color?
Well, it already has. So when the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, we saw a wave of voter suppression laws all across the South. Virginia was the exception, because we had a Democratic trifecta in 2020, and Delegate Marcia Price and I passed the Voting Rights Act of Virginia. So Virginia is the outlier, but everywhere else, particularly in the South, there were barriers put in place to voting that impact low income and communities of color more than anybody. And the federal government did nothing to stop it. And we have been trying, congressional Democrats have been trying to pass two bills, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and what we called HR 1, to restore not only the parts of the Voting Rights Act that were gutted, but to put stronger ethics laws in place to make sure that we reduce the influence of money by overturning Citizens United, which said that corporations and these super PACs could spend as much money as they wanted without the donations being public. And congressional Republicans have fought us every step of the way. So we are trying to restore the protections that we had at the federal level and expand and build on them, while Republicans are trying to put barriers in place because they know on the merits of their ideas they can't win. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to rig the system.
Okay, I understand that. That helps. And here we ask questions differently. Okay, we need things watered down.
Okay,
we don't get caught up into a lot of my listeners do not watch mainstream media. They don't watch the news. It's just a reality. They watch YouTube. They watch Instagram. They watch TikTok.
Yeah,
and so if I may ask questions in a way that I need you to kind of like make it very clear, because this is the sound bites that I think will add value to them understanding. Oh, I scrolled past. This is the scroll era.
Yes.
And you have the ability to obviously influence people in that way. So thank you for sharing that. So let me ask you this. We talked a little about, and I'm interested to kind of hear through your experience what it's been like working with your Republican congressional counterparts, I guess. You were in Washington. You're doing the work for our district. This is the 4th district, just to confirm that. And, but the world is watching the mainstream media, and they're looking at Trump and they're looking at Biden, right? And the reality of it is that Biden has done a lot of great things, but it's not always very apparent to people, to the everyday person, what those things are. I'm hoping that maybe you can speak to some of those things and what your efforts have been to support that. But at the same time, I want you to also, as we're going into a new election, can you help the everyday listener, the everyday person? How can you help them develop a more positive image of how they see their president? Because a lot of people only see him falling off horses, quite frankly, or falling off his bike, things like that. And Trump and their party is doing such a good job at trying to make him look like he's incompetent.
Look, this is not, like, nobody's perfect. Yeah. Okay. And I think part of the issue is President Biden's not very good at bragging. He's not as good as Donald Trump at bragging. Democrats in general are not as good as Republicans at bragging, and sometimes fall into the trap of our work will speak for us. But you're right. Now that most people get their information from a wide variety of sources, and there's a lot of misinformation. And so I think part of it is on us to help people weave through, like, what's fact and what's fiction. There are lots of presidents that have fallen down. But I'm looking at what he has done and what he has focused on. And he gets up every day with a fantastic partner in Vice President Harris and thinks and acts in the best interest of how can I help Americans and solve problems today. So you look at some of the bills that they've passed. He's done more legislatively than any president in modern history, some in 2 terms. And I'm not going to do bill names because nobody cares about bill names, but
that's pretty impressive. I wouldn't know that.
Right. So, we'll take infrastructure, roads, bridges, the solar projects, wind projects, electronic vehicle charging stations. He has put historic investments in transitioning America from coal and natural gas based electricity and energy, which is destroying our planet, to renewables like solar and wind, and electronic vehicles, and doing it in a way that's created jobs. in good paying jobs, and building an economy that leaves nobody behind. He's invested more in HBCUs than any other president. He has done more to strengthen our healthcare system than any other president, except maybe Barack Obama by putting the Affordable Care Act in place, but he's helped protect it and expand it. He's addressing the maternal health crisis. That's just a few of the things that he has done. And if I think, and look, I know it's sometimes boring to actually go to like the White House website. But
that's where the facts are.
That's where the facts are. Yeah. Or go to my website, which is McClellan.house.gov. Sign up for my newsletter. If you're not signed up for my newsletter, every week I send a newsletter out that talks about what we are doing on a weekly basis. And I break it down in a way that is accessible. 4 pages long at most. And we're trying to do more videos and reaching people where they are. But it's every single day. President Biden and Vice President Harris have woken up and said, what do I need to do to solve problems in this country and help people? Whereas the former president got up every day and basically said, how do I help myself and my friends? So
with the success that has happened, and you can speak for it, and again, I'm glad that you guys can go check it out. You know what I mean? Go see the facts. Sometimes you got to change your source of where you consume information. But under this leadership, how has it been like as far as like bipartisan support? Like, I mean, do you see cohesion? Are you seeing collaboration under?
Sometimes. Yeah. So with now, before I got there, it was, Democrats were in charge of the House, and now Republicans are. And I missed day one. I was sworn in on March 7th, 2013. Everybody else came in January 3rd. But it took them 15 tries to elect a speaker, because House Republicans are fighting with themselves. Now, the vast majority of people on both sides of the aisle are there for the right reasons. But there are about a couple dozen that are there to break shit, who are there for attention and for clicks and people following them. Yeah. We, for the first time ever, ousted the Speaker of the House. And it took House Republicans 3 weeks and 7 different candidates to elect a new one. And in that time, the way they have governed is they go right up to the cliff of a crisis. First it was, is America going to default on our national debt? And if we did, then the cost to you to borrow money, credit card debt, student loan debt would have gone up. We went right up to the cliff, and then they said, oh, we need to work with Democrats. Whereas from day one, Democrats were like, we're ready to fix this. We went right up to a cliff of a government shutdown at least twice, if not 3 times, which would have been devastating, particularly for Virginia. And then they said, oh, we got to work with Democrats. Most recently, we went right up to the cliff of providing aid to our allies and humanitarian aid. And then the speaker said, oh, I got to work with Democrats. So when they put partisanship aside and focus on people, then we work together. But it takes a crisis for them to do that. And that's just not a way to govern. Yeah.
One of the things that you've been very successful throughout your career when it comes to just getting people out to vote. And we obviously have big elections coming up. Can you speak to what you're doing in your district right now to support that?
So first of all, I am on the ballot running for re-election, as is Tim Kaine is up for re-election, the president and vice president. And we got city elections. Everybody in the city is up. And so a lot of what I'm doing and my team is doing is we're going to be knocking on doors. We're going to try to meet people where they are, no matter where they are, whether it's on social media, whether it's at the doors, whether it's out, in the community. Because this election, unlike any other, people do get their information from a wider variety of sources. We can't just expect, there's going to be a debate and everybody will see it and they'll know how to vote. So we're going to meet everybody where they are and just say, look, here's what we've been doing. And here's what we intend to do if you trust us with your vote again.
Once you get elected into Congress, how long is a term typically?
2 years. Well, for the House, it's 2 years. For the Senate, it's 6.
Okay. A lot of us don't understand it. I understand the difference between the House and the Senate when it comes to Virginia, as far as the General Assembly is concerned. I don't know. It's the same.
It's the same. So at the federal level in Congress, we got two bodies. You have the House, which is 435 people.
It's a big house.
It's big, yes.
Too many people.
It's a lot of people. And we have 100 senators. So every state has 2 senators. Okay. And then the House is divided by population. So when we do the census every year, then the House basically takes whatever the U.S. population is, divides it by 435, and that's how many people each representative represents. So I represent about 750, 800,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. 15 localities. Wow. And then we're up every 2 years, and the Senate is up every 6.
So who's running against you?
A guy who lives in Arlington.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? He was.
We don't have to give him any shine.
No, we don't.
I don't want. I'm just curious. I'm not familiar. Maybe I am, but are you doing any, like, will there be any debates, or is it just you run your race, they run their race?
I think we'll no one's invited us to a debate yet. It's pretty early. We both just got our nominations. Yeah. But I will be doing rallies. I'll be going door to door, doing a lot of sort of traditional campaign events, a lot of social media type stuff. We'll see if anybody hosts a debate.
We'll see if he watches this interview too. Maybe we'll plug him.
We'll see.
But we're not gonna give him any credit. We're not gonna give any. You're out to win.
Well, I thought it was interesting that no one who actually lives in the 4th district.
You thought it was interesting?
Yeah, nobody who lives here wanted to run.
I kind of see it as a respect.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to me. It's like no one really wanted to mess. You don't mess up things when they're working.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Are you doing anything to support anybody else's campaign?
Yes. So I am on the Biden-Harris campaign's National Advisory Board. There are about 50 elected officials from all across the country. So I'm doing a lot of work for them. I am helping Senator Kaine. Basically, I want to make sure that we have very high turnout here in the 4th. Yeah. If we have high turnout here in the 4th, then we can really make an influence on how Virginia votes. I'm looking at all the local candidates. It's trying to decide whether to get involved in those races or first I need to decide who I'm voting for. Yeah.
Be good. Take your time with that.
Yeah.
Because I'm just right now. It's
early.
It's early. It's interesting too. It's interesting. I was actually talking to the mayor recently and just kind of looking at some of the interviews that like some of the local RBA Mag particularly, they're interviewing people who are putting their hat in for mayor. And there's transition occurring in the city now because people recognize that they're not going to have a job in 6 months. And so
mayor's a hard job.
It's interesting to me. Like, I don't agree with to me, like in any form of business, there's transition. It seems really sloppy to me that there's no transition in like city politics when it comes to mayor. Like the mayor goes out, mayor comes in. Like,
well, there's supposed to be.
It's it's nothing in policy or writing to my understanding.
Yeah. Well, usually when
like if I'm mayor and I leave and you're coming in, you could bring your team. You could bring your people. I mean, it doesn't seem like Stoney said that him and Dwight Jones had conversation, and there was, but it was willingness there. Let's say it's a Republican that comes in as mayor, and they don't want to have a
Well, I think at the end of the day, and I don't know, maybe I'm just different, but I feel like at the end of the day, you are a public servant who has a responsibility to make sure whatever organization you're leading survives when you're gone. Yeah. And so they're supposed, I don't know if it's in the law or not, like it is in the state level, but there usually is a transition team put in place that helps the new mayor, put their team together and sort of figure out where the bathrooms are and how everything works. So hopefully that'll happen no matter who wins.
I hope so. So I want to transition a little bit and talk about, I mean, you've done a lot of things with like reproductive freedom, maternal health. I just learned that there was a like paternity leave. I never have known a man.
Oh, really?
I never knew of a man to have paternity, 12 weeks off.
Yeah.
But recently, one of my friends he said, "Okay, my wife's taking off for this. Now I'm gonna take off, and we ain't got to worry about childcare for the like first 6 months." I was like, I didn't even realize that was a thing.
Yes. Well, but it's not paid for everybody, and that's part of the problem. We're trying to fix that both at the state level and at the federal level. So you are guaranteed 12 weeks of unpaid leave under federal law. But you're not guaranteed any set amount of paid leave. And so we've been trying to fix that. There was a bill that passed at the state level that the governor vetoed, that would have set up almost like an insurance program, kind of like unemployment insurance, where everybody pays in and then that is what is used to pay your leave so that you still get paid. But it's, a lot of people think, leave is just like so you can bond with your baby. I mean, childbirth is hard, especially if you have a C-section, which I did, and like that's major surgery, and you need at least 8 weeks to recover. And having your partner there to help take care of you and to take care of the baby is really helpful. And I'm in the sandwich generation, so I also have had to deal with end of life situations with my parents. And
you call it the sandwich generation?
Sandwich generation. So I'm a mom, and I'm a child of elderly parents.
Okay.
And so you're having to care for both your parents and your children. So that's the sandwich generation.
Yes, I'm a sandwich too a little bit there. I hadn't heard that before. Yeah, I mean, the state level, federal level, this has been one of the biggest topics, period. Just talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you've done here in the district to champion that. And have you had any? You mean
paid leave or reproductive freedom?
Just reproductive freedom.
Okay.
And have you been able to work with some of your, some of the Democratic folks here on the state level as well? Because I'm more familiar with seeing everything get vetoed, quite frankly, here.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I did things backwards. For a lot of women who get into politics, it's like they get married, they have kids, and then they run. So I got elected, got married, had kids. So I was the first member of the Virginia House of Delegates to be pregnant and give birth while in office, and that was in 2010. I have a teenager. Pray for me. A teenage son. And so that gave me a really different perspective on how laws can impact the doctor-patient relationship, how abortion laws can impact pregnancy, because I'm a nerd, if y'all haven't figured that out. So when I got pregnant, I had to know everything that could go right and everything that could go wrong. And while that was happening, we started to get bills that would require an ultrasound before you had an abortion or put other restrictions in place. And I remember thinking, I had a friend who suffered fetal demise in her 7th month of pregnancy. And I remembered thinking, if this bill passes, she would then have to go get an ultrasound and would have to, by law, be asked if she wants to see it and listen to a heartbeat that she knew wasn't there. And I spoke against that bill on the floor, and I talked about that and other situations where these laws are just cruel and unnecessary. Now that law passed anyway. And so for 10 years, I worked to try to repeal it. And then in 2020, when we got Democratic control of the General Assembly and the governor, we passed a bill called the Reproductive Health Protection Act that removed medically unnecessary barriers to abortion. And we worked to try to get a constitutional amendment when Roe was overturned, because we knew, reproductive freedom should not be at the will of who's in control of the General Assembly. We weren't able to get a constitutional amendment, but as we saw a wave of bans, abortion bans across the country, Virginia, as we speak, is the only state in the South, the only place between, I think, Nevada or New Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean that doesn't have an abortion ban.
Wow.
And when you think about the multiple reasons why people get abortions, at the end of the day, the decision whether, when, and how to be a parent should be between you, your partner, and your medical provider.
Yeah.
And anybody else you want to bring into the discussion, not politicians in Richmond or Washington.
Yeah.
So part of what I've been doing is just like telling these stories that people can understand. Like, this is not just some theoretical thing. These are laws that impact people's lives. And then I've been doing whatever I can to make sure that those decisions are left to people and not politicians.
I've been very, very careful. You know, my wife has helped condition me to understand to not speak on things that have absolutely nothing to do with you. So that is one of those, like, I never talk publicly about abortion, really. I mean, but I agree with the statement that you just made. What is the other side? Like, what is the other, like, what is the other position that Republicans have? Like, I don't that's what I don't understand.
Well, it's frankly, it's them imposing their own moral and religious view on everybody else. There are some who believe, many actually, who believe life begins at conception. And so for them, it's about, they're all of their decisions are around that belief.
Okay.
And they don't think through, that's fine for you to believe, but you should not impose your beliefs on my healthcare decisions.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of Virginians, the vast majority of Americans agree with what I just said. They think that those decisions should be between individuals and their providers.
I don't know what you can. I don't see why you can't believe both. You know,
exactly.
I don't see why you can't believe both. At the end of the day, I don't think it should be about belief. I don't think belief is what we're talking about here. We're talking about the person's right to. You know, you can have your belief, and we all have our beliefs.
And some would say it's about control.
Yeah, that's what it really seems to me.
It's about control.
You're making a decision. I won't say names, but you referenced something just now that kind of reminded me of it. There was a elected official that I had on the show one time they was speaking about you in a positive way. It was a positive way, but they said one of the things about you that you've been really great at is from earlier in your career is you know how to, when you identify something, you know how to get in front of it. And a lot of times be the first. You was like, and you've been able to use that throughout your career. Like you was a young Democrat. You was probably the president, probably the first president, right? I mean, if you don't mind, can you just stun a little bit for the camera? Tell people all the things that you've been the first of, because you've been the first of a lot of stuff.
I've been the first of a lot. So, all right, going back to young Democrats. So I'm the first and only person to be president of the state Young Democrats for 3 terms. I was one of the youngest women elected to the House delegates, first one to give birth while in office. First woman to represent the 9th Senate District in the state Senate. First Black woman elected to Congress from Virginia. And I've passed over, in the State House, I passed over 370 bills, many of them that made Virginia the first state in the South to expand access to abortion, to expand the right to vote, to expand worker rights to domestic workers, to have a clean energy standard. And I think the bottom line is this for me. I'm a nerd. Okay.
You've said that a couple times.
I'm proud of it.
Why do you say that?
Because I'm proud of it. A lot of people think nerd is
it's a cool thing now. To be
it is. Well, it hadn't always been cool, but I've always been proud of it. In that, if I'm interested in something, I have to know everything there is to know about it. Yeah. And early on, I became very interested in history. My parents were older than a lot of my friends' parents. They'll get mad. My mom, she's still with us. Don't tell her I told her her age, but she was born in 1932 in the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. My dad was born in 1925 in Nashville, Tennessee. Listening to their stories of what life was like growing up during the Depression, during the New Deal, during Jim Crow.
Yeah.
I came to see that at its best, government is a force that helps people.
Mm-hmm.
At its worst, it's a force that oppresses some for the benefit of a few. So when I was 11, I decided I want to be part of making government that force for good.
At 11 years old.
At 11. I didn't know what that meant. At 11?
You was a nerd.
See?
You knew what you want to do at 11 years old. That's
I mean, cool. I didn't know exactly what, but at that time, it was like, I'm going to help. I knew I was a Democrat. So I'm like, I'm going to help get Democrats elected.
Mm-hmm.
Then I thought, I really wanted to be a lawyer to a congressional committee. Like that, when I went to law school, that's what I wanted to do. But life's what happens when you're making other plans. And I ended up in Congress, just not as a lawyer. But at the end of the day, it is all about, I see a problem.
Yeah.
And I see somebody that needs help. And I'm like, how can I fix that? And how can I help them? And so it's I'm pretty smart. Yeah. So I'm a type of person who I can see the big picture and I can see the weeds.
Yeah.
And how they fit together. And that has really helped me use the legislative process to help people.
The reason why I wanted you to do that is because in my last episode, and I put a clip out about it, we talk about marketing and branding. And I think that's one of the things. I think because you're good at telling stories, and there's a narrative to your to your development throughout your career. There's kind of been this and that and this and that, and when you can brand those stories and be the first on and kind of in the front of them, it's no surprise that you was the first Black woman in Congress. I mean, you've been the first at a lot of things for a long time, and so I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you. Well, and I love telling stories, and I love going back to what I said earlier about a government by and for the people. When you have the youngest daughter of parents who grew up during Jim Crow and the New Deal, who I had domestic workers in my family. I had people who have fought for the right to vote. I can see how our past impacts our present and what we need to do to move beyond it. And I use the power of storytelling to help move some of my colleagues who otherwise can't see that perspective because it's not their life experience.
Yeah. Can you, I've seen you've been involved a little bit with some of the postal service.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what the hell's wrong with our postal system?
It's slow. Well, so, basically they tried to change the model of how mail is delivered by going to like a regional distribution center where all the mail would go to a Richmond distribution center and then be processed out. But when they did the transition, they didn't do a good job of training folks on it, getting buy-in from their employees. And then there was sort of a lot of things that went wrong at the same time, like equipment that broke, a vendor that went out of business. And so as a result, what was already a problem with delayed mail.
I mean, all we heard was that due to COVID, jobs, we heard there's a lot of workers no longer working anymore, and that's the problem.
That was part of it.
Yeah.
But part of it really was, to be fair, if you could go get paid more, working somewhere else, with less stress, you do it.
Yeah.
But the real issue was the transition to the new distribution process went wrong. And it has taken a lot of time and a lot of pressure from me and our senators to really get them to first to admit that and then to really do something about it. And I've been very disappointed at how they've stonewalled really their customers. And I think, and they'll say, oh, well, we're getting better. It's not, people are now, our mail is now like 77% late rather than 65% late. I'm like, well, I mean, I got F plus, it's still F. And it's not like how often are you late? It's how late are you? Because we're talking about, people were getting Christmas cards at Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Dang.
So It's going in the right direction.
That's crazy. I'm the type. Me and my brother, we do it in joking. We'll buy Mama a birthday card, right? But we'll go in the store and buy a Christmas card intentionally and mark out like the Merry Christmas and be like Happy Birthday. We'll mark it out.
That's funny.
It's more personalized that way.
Is.
And that's what she expects of us. She doesn't expect it to be like,
well, she get a Christmas card for Valentine's Day.
Mother's Day card. She got a Christmas card. We just marked out the Christmas card and say, hey, these words we felt like was the best for you.
Yeah, that's sweet.
No, the postal thing though, it has been crazy. I know that I never get my I used to get my inspection stuff like in the mail. That's what really brought it to my attention. Like that stuff wasn't coming in the mail. And then I'm getting the officers telling me, hey, your car is, we've seen that I'm like, what do you mean? I usually get reminded of these things. And so I had to look into it. And
to be fair to them, I mean, a big part of the problem is, fewer and fewer people are getting mail. And so the costs to deliver mail have gone up. But I remind them, the people that are still getting mail, like they're the ones that need it the most and are often the most vulnerable, and you still got to deliver their mail on time.
Yeah.
So for that very
reason. And the
reason.
people who are complaining, like a lot of times it's older folks too. They're not getting their RTD. They're not getting, and they write checks still.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They do a lot of stuff by hand.
Now they used to hand deliver that. I guess they don't anymore.
I don't know. I'm thinking, maybe I'm wrong. I'm just thinking of the demo. I think there's a demo though.
Oh yeah.
That,
yeah.
Yeah. Maybe not. I don't know. Tell me this again. We spoke earlier about our sponsor here today, Community 5050. Talk to me a little bit about you're very involved community wide. I mean, you obviously work in the federal level, but you got to keep your eyes on the ground too. You do that. You meet with big media folks. You talk with grassroots folks. Talk to me about like what you see in the economy as it pertains to just like nonprofit, for-profit collaboration and private and public. Like in your district particularly. Like, and do you see opportunities?
I do. Well, first of all, let me give a shout out to my staff because I have an amazing staff in Washington, D.C., but I have an amazing staff here in Richmond and an office in Brunswick that really help me, no matter where I am, keep my eyes on where I'm not. So shout out to my staff.
Yeah.
But what I've seen, government can't do everything. The nonprofit community can't do everything. The business community can't do everything, but we all have different strengths and weaknesses. And when we work together to identify problems and then work within our strengths to solve those problems, that's when problems get solved. And I think, for government, a lot of it is making sure that those nonprofits have the resources they need, that we remove any barriers in their way. But often it's the nonprofit community that is in the trenches identifying problems that we're trying to solve. And they can tell us, like, you're missing this, or you thought you solved this, but really you created this problem over here. So I think it is very important that we collaborate and talk often. One of my frustrations with government is we will often pass a bill and then move on to the next thing, and we don't come back and say, did we get that right? And the nonprofit community often, and the business community too, but they often can help us figure out like, no, you didn't get that right. You got to come back. Yeah. And there's a gap here where what you think you did isn't really working out that way. Yeah.
There's your office. And this is particularly for the community. There may be listeners right now who want to know how they can be engaged. Like, do you have like folks who are doing outreach and? Oh yeah. So in the district office, Charity Howell is my district director. Marin Campbell, many of you met she was my chief of staff in the state senate. She's now my outreach director. And then I have constituent service folks that do both outreach and what we call casework. So if you have a problem with a federal agency, and they each have different areas they work in. So Elizabeth Harden, Sylvia Copeland, Bianca Casper, handle all of that kind of stuff. And so if you have any problem with a state agency, or you want to make sure that my office is aware of any activities that a particular group have going on, from, veterans to seniors,
You can go to mcclellan.house.gov. It tells you all the different ways to get in touch with my office, both Washington and in the district, or you can follow me on most of the socials. So I call it Twitter. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at Rep McClellan. You can also reach my staff that way.
Great. I had to ask that question. Sometimes people give me a hard time. They say, you don't ask, you got to ask the questions that's a us question.
Yes.
That's a question for those. Some people are listening just specifically to figure out, okay, we hear what you're saying. Where can we connect? Who are the people that we can connect to? Those resources.
And let me say, the way that I really knew there was an issue with the post office was because the number of calls that Elizabeth was getting, because Elizabeth handles post office issues. Stuff. So any federal, please do. Any federal agency, VA, any of that, my office can help if you're having problems. And even with state and local, we can't do that, but we can point you in the right direction.
Got you. Thank you so much. I'm going to we're wrapping up here toward the end. We got about 10, 15 minutes. I don't know if I asked. I mean, we talked a little bit about the maternal. We talked about the production, but we didn't get into the child care assistance. I was interested in talking about that too.
Yeah. So I, as a working mom, there are a couple of different crises that are going on. There's the maternal health crisis where, the United States has some of the poorest maternal health outcomes of any industrial nation, and it's getting worse, and particularly for Black moms. If you are a Black woman, you are 3 times as likely to die in childbirth as a white woman. And I almost died in childbirth with my daughter, my second child. There's also a child care crisis where finding quality, affordable child care is just not, people just can't do it.
Yeah.
And in a lot of places, child care costs as much, if not more, than college.
Yeah.
So I have a bill that really looks at the intersection of those two problems by creating a government grant program to help expand childcare options for pregnant and postpartum women, because when you're pregnant through the first year after your baby is born, that's when you're the most vulnerable to death. And if we can take one stress off of you in that period, and that is making sure you have access to childcare while you recover, that's what that bill is intended to do.
Is Petersburg in your district? One of the things, and again, I can't speak on it super intelligently. It's been a while now, but I think one of the things that stood out to me when the city was looking at bringing the casino here with the city's plan was there was a child care piece there. There was an incentive that, I guess there was a tax that would go toward creating child care benefits for, obviously it didn't go through though, but I see the casinos come. Is the casino coming to Petersburg?
I don't know.
You don't know?
It depends. I still get I was born in Petersburg, raised down in Ettrick. I still get my hair done down there. And depending on which hairdresser I listen to, yes or no. And they tend to know.
Yeah.
If the people want it, it'll come.
Yeah.
But jury's still out. What that vote's gonna look.
Did you have a position on that?
If the people want it,
I
mean, it's really up to them.
Yeah.
And having said that, though, I don't think we need to be investing in our children, whether we have a casino or not.
Yeah.
And I think too often government invests at the end and not the beginning. So like childcare and early childhood education should be the foundation for that individual child's education success, for thriving, healthy communities and a thriving, healthy democracy. Your brain, 80% of your brain is developed by the time you're 3, 90% by the time you're 5. So we should be investing in early childhood education, not investing as much. I mean, we need to invest, but it's like upside down. We spend more of our time focused on higher education, economic development and incarceration.
Yeah.
But if we spent more time investing in early childhood education and childcare, we would have to spend less at the end.
Yeah. It did seem political a little bit. And if we get this casino across, we'll take the tax benefits of it and we'll be able to put that in to open up these childcare centers. That was what the mayor was talking about. And a lot of people came back, they say, Randy, that sounds good, but come on now.
Well, frankly, the state and the federal government need to be investing more.
Yeah, but to your point, why can't we do that anyway without having a casino? Anyway? I think the other thing with the casino in Richmond was, again, I'm not from Richmond. I don't gamble anyway. I've been to Vegas a few times, and my wife, she thinks she don't believe me when I tell her, like, I'm on a bicycle. Like I'm not doing the stuff in Vegas that people do. I don't like gamble. I'm too cheap to gamble. But if a casino came, I guess the position I do have on is, I just think it's interesting how when you identify a community, like the majority of people who voted against the casino in Richmond was not from that district.
There were some, yeah.
I mean, there were some, but there was a lot of, so I just think that, like, whether it's in Richmond or wherever, like, I don't care. I know it's a county. I get it. But, like, to put it in an area where it's going to thrive and also be more complementary to the community. Don't put it in the community. That's my position. Don't put it in the community that could have is it going to create jobs and opportunities, or is it going to create just more reasons to marginalize the community? That's kind of my lens on it.
I think there were arguments on both sides. And what I guess my biggest question was, everybody said, well, this is going to be a destination location.
Come on, you won't laugh. I'm sorry. I mean, that don't even sound real to me though. Like, it don't even sound real to me. You ain't got to say that.
I don't know that many people.
If they would have put in Short Pump in Henrico County, it'd been a whole different situation. And I could have saw that.
I mean, if you look at where other casinos are.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Petersburg don't seem like a destination location either. Listen, Randy was on podcast, Virginia podcast for the culture, from the culture. We just speaking from the perspective of how I'm coming from, how I see it, but I speak for a lot of people when I say, come on now. Destination. I mean, we'll move on. We'll move on. A lot of folks, like, again, they hear when you come on this show, people get familiar with you in a way a little bit that they may not on the other shows. So we can ask you like other questions, and you've done this before. You're familiar with the random impulsive questions that I may ask with no agenda, and I don't even know what I'm going to say. But it helps people kind of see the other side of you. And I've got great feedback on our previous shows when I've asked you.
Glad you to come back.
Oh yeah, of course. You're a staple anytime. But so I'm going to ask you some of these questions, and this is for the audience. What are you listening to on the radio right now? Are you listening to anything particular? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you listening to music?
I do listen to
talk
podcasts.
Radio?
So I don't listen to the radio very much. I'll either listen to books on tape or my own playlist, which is mostly like 90s stuff.
That's okay.
I love Prince.
My son loves 90s music.
I love Prince.
He's 12. Prince is your guy?
I love Prince.
You like Prince? I don't be understanding. I really don't.
Really?
I mean, I don't understand. I like Michael more than Prince, but I just don't understand.
I like them both. I like them both.
He had his butt out too much for me to understand why. For me, it was just too much. I didn't understand. But
really? I mean, when Doves Cry, like
he got some nice songs.
He has some really, and
Prince would have been as amazing as he was. Imagine him today.
I know. Well, and I love
today.
Guitar.
He would have been even bigger.
I love guitar, so I love. And I got to see him live.
Oh wow!
And I think one of the most impressive things to me was in the middle of. I mean, because you have the sets that are flashy and the whole show.
Yeah.
And then in the middle, he just came out with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And played. And he was one of the best guitarists, one of the best musicians, like pure musicians, ever. So, I miss Prince very much. Anyway.
And he stood on principles in business too. He wasn't bending for anybody.
Yeah. But usually, and my kids make fun of me all the time because it's like, unless the music is on a TV show or in a movie that I'm watching, I probably may not notice it. Now, of course, there's something like, yes, when, Beyonce drops a new
Did you listen to the country album?
I did.
Did you like it?
I did. I loved Blackbird. That was probably my favorite one.
I like the song with her and Miley Cyrus. I don't remember the name of it, but but it's kind of calmed down. Like no one's since Drake and Kendrick was battling out. No one's even talking about Beyonce.
I think people have like a 15-minute attention.
Did you get caught up in? Did you hear about that? Drake and you heard about it?
How could I not?
Well, some people don't believe that a congresswoman listens to that type of stuff. That's why we got to kind of paint the picture. We got to.
I got to stay relevant. I can't just stay in the 90s.
That's the truth.
Actually, the funny thing is, my comms director, when we were talking about doing this, he said, "They're probably gonna ask you about Drake and Kendra." I was like, "I got it. Don't worry."
I'm glad they did their homework.
They do.
So, are you watching anything on Netflix right now? When you Netflix and chill with your husband, what y'all watching?
Y'all
watching Sisters?
I just finished Bridgerton.
Okay, yep.
And
my wife watches that. I think that's when I walk out.
I can see that. My husband.
I need a certain amount of ignorance with all my. It's got to be entertaining for me.
Yeah, that's not on Netflix, but Interview with the Vampire.
Okay, not familiar with that.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
So I don't really watch a lot of TV unless I watch sports and I watch. If you catch me on something and I like it, I'll sit there and binge the whole thing. But
yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah, I haven't been caught on that.
Yeah. Well, those are the two things I'm watching right now. And it's funny because Interview with the Vampire is on AMC, and it's one where they drop one every week, and. So I'm like waiting. It's every Sunday it comes out. And then with Netflix, it's like the minute it comes, I like binge it all. And then it's like, oh, now I gotta wait.
So at your house, who's the cook? You or your husband? Who cooks the best?
Depends. We both cook.
You both cook?
Yeah. When we first got married, we cooked together, and then we had kids and got busy. And now he does more of the cooking, but and he's more adventurous. Yeah. He'll go find stuff,
recipes and stuff like that.
Yeah, and try them out. And I'm more like what my mom cooked, I cook.
Okay, gotcha. Do y'all Grubhub, Uber Eats? Do y'all do any of that stuff?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
We have to. I mean, when you got two kids,
that's what I was wondering because you're kind of like I don't want to call it the off season because you're still working, But that's one of the things that at my house we're trying to find a balance with, like how many days we cook, how many days we order out. We got to find a balance. My cholesterol been a little high lately. So
mine too. Well, and we used to be really good about, before we had kids, like cooking for the week. But man, when you got a teenage boy.
Yeah. What's it like having a teenage boy now? We watch our kids grow up pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. He still wants to hang out with me. So that's good. We'll see how long that lasts. So cool. He loves coming to DC to visit. And he's really into science. He wants to be an astronomer. And I think I got really cool points with him because we had the NASA administrator. I'm on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And so we had the NASA administrator. And Jack had a question he wanted me to ask, and I did, about the Chandra telescope, which probably you all have never heard of. I hadn't heard of it.
Definitely don't know what you're talking about.
You may have heard of Hubble, or, it's a telescope that uses X-ray pictures of all the planets and everything. So he wanted me to ask about it, and I did. And then some random astronomer started following me on.
The smart kid.
Yeah, he's very smart.
Is he on the route? Is he on his way to UVA, and is he going to be in public service?
That's a good question. He's more of an advocate. My daughter is more of a politician. Yeah. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if she ends up running for office, and then he's the one that's like out protesting. Got you.
Chicken or fish? Chicken.
Depending on the fish, though.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite restaurant in your district that you like to? I mean, that's probably a hard question to ask, though.
It's a hard one. There are so many good ones. You
don't want nobody to get upset.
Well, I love them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gained a lot of weight since I got elected to office.
I don't see. I think you look great.
Thank you.
I don't. I wouldn't even. You shouldn't even said that.
You know what? I'm okay with it. I'm okay. I do gotta watch my cholesterol.
My cholesterol is. I don't know what's going on.
Well,
I don't know what's going on other than
take care of that.
I'm working on. I exercise a lot. It's something I'm putting in my body. The doctor said I need to beef up my spinach and vegetables. So
I do love spinach. Spinach is good.
Yeah. I want you to think about somebody that you think that would be a good guest on the show at some point. And, you know, you ain't got to say it now, but maybe shoot a suggestion. I'm trying to build my guest list based through my guest.
Okay.
You know, the people that you think that would be good. And, you know, if you think got a good question for them, you can suggest that too. But,
I will. I got to tell you, though, you've helped inspire me, though.
How's that?
So I started doing... It's not as long. It's like 20 minutes at most. I do this thing called Moments with McClellan, where I interview some of my colleagues.
Oh, yeah?
And we just did Maxwell Frost, first Gen Z member of Congress. And I asked no political, it's all fun, like get to know you type stuff. We're going to do Leader Jeffries. I'm pretty excited.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I inspired you.
You did, man. This is fun. I was like, man, he's having fun asking me these questions.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I'd be on my best behavior with you. Other people, just,
you don't have to be.
No, I need to be. I need to be. But for you, of course. But no, this is fun. This has been so. I don't know. I probably got 150, 160 episodes. I don't know. I mean, I quit counting. That got boring counting. But I've been able to leverage a lot of things through the behind the scenes conversation. And it's therapeutic for me. You know, like everything about my day-to-day work is serious in healthcare and mental health. And like to have just conversations and my goal is to humanize people. Like my goal is that I help people see that, you know, yes, this is Congresswoman McClellan, and yes, she's a big deal, unless she's, you know, the first of everything you could imagine. But when you sit down and talk with her, she's actually just a cool person that's just like everybody else. And that's what my goal is and intention in showcasing people. And then the response I get back is that, like, you really did ask her about such and such and such. Like, yeah, like, don't be scared to ask people questions. Like, that's that's the best thing you can do is just be authentic and show people who you are. So that's kind of what this show's about.
Well, we'll have to get you to Washington. You can do one up there.
Yeah, you know, let me come in and moderate one of them debates. I'm going to be like, listen, come on, man.
Come on now.
No, but nah. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And thank you guys for listening to the show. This has been another episode of the Randy Wilson Podcast. Remember, you can find this podcast everywhere podcasts are played: Stitcher, Libsyn, Google Play, Apple. But we suggest you go to YouTube and RandyWilsonPodcast.com. Like, we are done just endorsing all these other platforms and not supporting our own. So you can go to RandyWilsonPodcast.com and you can get content there as well.